Hello there, this is Spencer. Today I just wanted to vent my frustration going on between Iran and the United States and the tension that is currently rising in this political climate. And I just don't get it. It just seems like over and over and over again in the Middle East, the United States government continues to make the same mistake time after time after time, despite who is president. Whether it's Syria, Libya, Iraq, Afghanistan, and now Iran. I mean, at some point, you have to just pump the brakes and realize that this is completely worthless. There are thousands of people dying. There are countries that are worse off now than they were when they had a totalitarian government ruling their country. Think about that. They were better off being ruled by a bloodthirsty tyrant than they currently are now. And it really bodes the question about who's actually pulling the trigger, who's actually pulling the levers and the powers that be. Because it seems like no matter who is president, there always is an entanglement going on in the Middle East. And I'm just so sick of seeing the same game being played out over and over and over again. Now, this morning, based on news reports, now I don't know how much you can trust the news nowadays because it's basically all propaganda and lies. But basically, what's being told is that there was a strike that was to be on Iran based on the recent tensions going on, the two tankers, the Japanese tanker and the Norwegian tanker that were supposedly hit by Iranian mines. And then earlier this week, we had a situation where a drone was taken out by Iran missile defense systems. And now there was an actual order to attack these defense systems. And apparently up to 150 people, possibly more, could have been killed because of these airstrikes. And within the closing minutes of these strikes being ordered by the current president, Donald Trump, he decided to pull out from this. And I like this for obvious reasons. Full disclosure, I actually voted for Trump. And one of the big reasons why I did was because he was anti-war. And I was so sick of seeing the neocons and the neolibs and the deep state basically just doing everything in their power to acquire wealth, money, power, all in the name of oil and the blood of innocent people. Now, despite there being a huge fanatical side of Islam, I have no actual problem with the entirety of Islam. I do have a problem with the portion, the 20% portion, which happens to be millions of people that believe in the justified bombings of innocent civilians. But can you really blame them after the blatant imperialism of the United States? It's mind-boggling to see what is going on in the world right now. The United States does not need another war. And I can't really blame Iran. If we look at a map right here, we're currently in Iraq, we're currently in Afghanistan, and those two countries are centered, basically squeezing Iran. Do you blame them to be a little loose on the trigger, given the fact that they are currently surrounded by United States Armed Forces? I don't blame them at all. I mean, can you imagine, just for example, in this hypothetical scenario, that let's say Russia was in Canada, Russia was in Mexico. Would you blame the United States if they were a little quick on the trigger there? Given the fact that they are currently surrounded by the Russians? Because I certainly don't. This just continues to go on over and over and over again. Earlier this morning, President Donald Trump on Twitter, President Obama made a desperate and terrible deal with Iran, gave them $150 billion plus $1.8 billion in cash. Iran was in big trouble. He bailed them out, gave them a free path to nuclear weapons and soon. Instead of saying thank you, Iran yelled death to America. I terminated the deal, which was not even ratified by Congress, and imposed strong sanctions. They are a much weakened nation today than they are at the beginning of my presidency when they were causing major problems throughout the Middle East. Now, I do not discredit the fact that there are factions in Iran that do terrible things. But it is blatantly obvious to anyone that's currently looking at the paradigm that's going on in the Middle East that Saudi Arabia and Iran, both from different factions within the Muslim faith, Shia and Sunni respectively, are at war and at odds with one another. There has never been a terrorist attack from an Iranian on United States soil, despite the fact Saudi Arabia, on the other hand, has had a terrorist attack. Perhaps you've heard of it. It's called 9/11. But that doesn't matter, right? Because Saudi Arabia has the petrodollar, and God, we couldn't lose that. But of course, not to mention the fact, I'm not anti-Israel. I understand their current predicament going on in the Middle East. I mean, you're basically surrounded by a bunch of countries that hate you. Some people would say apartheid, Israel didn't deserve that land, that it was taken by force, after World War II and the extermination of almost their entire religion. But I would also argue that the Jews, as well as the Christians, have had to run from the Middle East because of the persecution that they faced while inside the Middle East. The Muslims are not nearly as tolerant as you would think that they would be. The Jews are gone from a majority of these countries. The Christians are gone. Christian killings in Africa as well as in the Middle East are in the highest over the last 10 years that we've ever seen. I'm not blind to that fact. On Monday, they shot down an unmanned flying drone in international waters. Continuing with Twitter. We cocked and loaded to retaliate last night on 3 different sites. When asked how many will die, 150 people, sir, was the answer from a general. 10 minutes before the strike, I stopped it. Not proportionate to shooting down an unmanned drone. I am in no hurry. Our military is rebuilt, new and ready to go. By far, blah, 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 blah. You get the point. It's just so ridiculous that we are getting to this point. We do not need another war in the Middle East.
He said, I just got this down from upstairs, meaning the Secretary of Defense's office today, and he said, this is a memo that describes how we're going to take out 7 countries in 5 years, starting with Iraq and then Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and finishing off Iran.
We're going to be invading all of these countries, and they want an oil pipeline to run from Saudi Arabia up into Europe. I'm pretty sure that's the end goal of this. That's why they're trying to invade all of these countries so that they can extract all of their oil and what have you. And this is just something that needs to be addressed. We do not need another war in the Middle East. I'm so sick of these war hawks. It is an absolute travesty. The first president of the United States, George Washington, and we're coming up on July pretty quickly here. Do you know what he said? Do not entangle yourselves in foreign wars. And yet the United States, once again, is doing just that. Let me know what you thought. Let me know, should we go to war with Iran? Is this a great deal again for the United States to get into another war? Thousands dead. More targets on the United States. As if the world and the Middle East and Muslims didn't hate us enough. It's such a fucking joke. God bless America, the real America. Have a great fucking day.